Well, it seems former President Bush is still the #1 target for Democrats, including the top Democrat in this country, President Obama, again attacking his predecessor's policies just yesterday as disastrous at a fundraiser in Dallas, Texas, saying those policies drove the United States economy into the ground. This is, of course, not the first time President Obama has blasted the previous administration for things that are now going wrong in this country.
We have inherited an economic crisis as deep and as dire as any since the Great Depression.
By any measure, my administration inherited a fiscal disaster.
There's got to be some give on the other side, particularly when you drove the car into the ditch.
Nancy Skinner is a syndicated radio talk show host, and she's my guest now. Nancy, the criticism from some on the right has been that is unseemly, it is getting old, and it doesn't reflect enough responsibility taking for the policies that President Obama has put in place since he took office back in January of '09.
Well, Megan, I don't want to come off like a whiner, but the fact is, presidents don't get do-overs. If they did, we could just completely let that go. And if each president got a new slate, great, fine, we wouldn't bring it up again. The problem is, my dad's a football coach, so the analogy is the first-string quarterback, you put the second stringer in, the 50 points and he has to take over. He brings us back in the third quarter. He's down by 45 points, and you say, hey, let's go back to do what the first stringer was doing, which is tax cuts. And the president is saying we have made tremendous progress from where we were, from the ditch we were in. We got the car out of the ditch. Now it's time to get the engine running faster, rev it up, and move forward. So it is relevant in that he didn't get a clean slate. He has to clean up someone else's mess before he can even point to any of his own really solid accomplishments.
But he doesn't take responsibility for anything that he has done. And there's no question that while he's been president, he has added billions, trillions of dollars to the national debt, which is what a lot of people point to as one of the reasons they think we're in an economic problem right now. And the reason that is a problem for many people politically is the president just a couple of months ago said this. Watch this about responsibility.
Don't make excuses. Take responsibility not just for your successes, take responsibility where you fall short as well. There are going to be times when you screw up. There'll be times where you hurt people you love. There'll be times where you make a mistake and you stray from the values that you hold most deeply. And when that happens, it's the easiest thing in the world to start looking around for somebody else to blame.
Don't make excuses. Don't look for somebody else to blame. And his critics say that's all he's done since he took office.
Well, I think he has taken responsibility for certain things that have happened in his administration. When you look at the economic policies, the spending that you talked about, the $700 billion stimulus, that was the right solution to the problem. He did have a $1.3 trillion deficit to start with. That confined his options for a recovery. So that stimulus got us back, got this economy moving again.
He said that the stimulus, if we did it, that it would peak, it would stop unemployment when it got to about 8.5%. And we wound up going essentially to 10%. Now we're still hovering in the 9s. So, the stimulus did not come out as promised.
You know what? I think the stimulus was not large enough. I think there was political pressure. You couldn't go over $1 trillion. So it should have been larger. And in fact, we may, as we're looking at the outlook right now, we may need to do this. They need to pass this bill today, $26 billion to schools in the states, because we can't afford to take the pedal off the gas at this juncture.
Well,
we're just starting to recover. So,
do you think that this message is going to resonate with, I guess it will resonate with Democrats. I don't know. I assume it won't with Republicans. And of course, we're always talking about the independent vote, which is so critical, because I looked at the latest Rasmussen poll. We've got it here. I want to ask you your thoughts on this, Nancy. And he did this just a couple days ago, August of 2010. He said, who's to blame for the bad economy? 48% said President Obama. 47% said President Bush. Compare that to May of 2009, where 62% blamed President Bush, just 27% blamed President Obama. That is a significant shift. More and more and more, they are holding this president accountable for this economy, not President Bush.
which is why he needs and review the history of this. President Bush started with a surplus, turned it into a $1.3 trillion deficit, so that it did restrict his options. He is having to do that, and that's why we keep having to talk about this.
How long does he get
furthermore,
to rely
Megan,
on that
the tax
crutch?
cuts. Well, I think at least through, his first term, I think you have to compare them after term on term because, Bush from 2001 through 2007, which was the end of the recession, their average growth was like 2.3% per year. And then we fell into the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression. So if you look at a snapshot of his economic picture in his term, you can't compare that with, 2 years of trying to undo some of that or fix or address some of those problems. And then the tax cuts expiring, that's why he's really talking about it. Because
Okay.
if we let those, if we say we need them again, we're going to go back and do exactly what got us in the ditch. That's why he's saying, no, let's look at what happened, what we've done, let's move forward.
I understood. And a lot of Democrats are actually calling for those tax cuts not to expire. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. You and I have talked about that one before. Nancy, always love hearing your perspective. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
You too.